What is going on, YouTube? What is going on, Kansas City? And what is going on, everybody? And welcome to the Beat of KC. Today, we have another guest on to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm super pumped about this one. We obviously have Caleb James, who writes for Arrowhead Live, obviously runs the podcast at ChiefsTake. You guys need to head on over there. I'm telling you what, we have honestly a special guest who is just phenomenal at breaking down film. I'm pretty sure you went to Truman, right?
Yes, sir. Yes,
All right.
sir.
Went to Truman. I'm pretty sure he majored in breaking down film. I'm just going to be honest with you guys. I swear that's what his degree is in. Caleb, what's going on, my friend?
Dude, thanks for having me on your show tonight, man. I really appreciate it. And going to school for breaking down film, not exactly what you want you to get your degree in, but it's more interesting a lot of the times than regular school can be.
Yeah, for sure, man, for sure. So go ahead before we jump into this and I really start to pick your brain a little bit. Tell everybody where they can find you, and go ahead and talk a little bit about the podcast.
So you guys can find me on Twitter as always at CJ Scoobs. That's where I do most of my main work from. As he said before, I do writing for our website, Arrowhead Live. You can just check that out at Arrowhead Live. We got a lot of like cool little shirts and stuff. You can go check that out. That's where all my film review articles get posted to. I host two podcasts. I do the Coach's Corner, which is like a film specific breakdown that actually we have a YouTube channel for us. Go subscribe to that. It's cool. And then I also have the ChiefsTake podcast, which you can find that on like Apple, Spotify. I do that with a couple of friends of mine that I went to high school with. So that one's pretty laid back, pretty chill, more of like a fan perspective one. But yeah, if you guys enjoy this kind of content, I can check all that stuff out for sure.
Awesome. Well, I'm telling you guys, go check it out. It is definitely worth it. So we're going to jump into this, man. Obviously, training camp is one of the biggest, I guess, biggest aspects when it comes to an NFL season. You're going in, you're starting to figure out what you got in your team. And obviously, we have a revamped offensive line. I know you've hit on it. A ton of people who cover the Chiefs have hit on it. One of the biggest things that I want to focus on is the fact that really you had a wing eating competition against a couple. Yeah, I know you didn't do it. I'm messing around. But tell us just a quick story about the situation where you kind of ran into a few of our rookie offensive linemen.
Yeah, so I've talked about this a little bit on our podcast. And I even
Yeah.
posted a picture of it to Twitter. But I've been covering the Chiefs offensive line rebuild for like close to the last 6 months. I've been like doing my own scouting reports, looking for the kind of guys that can get the fill in for it. It's pretty much basis of our draft guide that we launched back in April. But it's here a couple of weeks ago. It's a Saturday night, and there's some UFC fights on. So a couple of friends and I, we didn't want to pay the full $100, but they had the fights on at Buffalo Wild Wings. So, you can go to Buffalo Wild Wings and pay for like a big thing of wings. I think we got like a 50 wings for the split between the three of us. You can get that a lot cheaper than paying for all those fights. So we decided to do that. We're having a real good time just sitting there. I can't even remember. You see, it's so crazy. I can't even really remember who's fighting. I don't even really remember a lot of the outcomes of the fights, except for that Nate Diaz lost his fight. But the one thing that was funny, I got up to go to the bathroom. This is about 11:30 at night. This is about an hour or so before the main event kicks off. And I go there and I'm walking back and I look over to my right and I see two pretty large human beings sitting there at the table. And I do a double take and I was like, I couldn't tell who it was at first. And then I was like, I'm pretty sure one of those guys plays for the Chiefs. And then I looked again. I'm like, oh, that's Trey Smith and Creed Humphrey sitting over here about 20 feet away from our table. And so I did a double take again once we got back to our seats. And I'm like, yeah, I've definitely covered these guys enough. And this is like, these guys were also featured on Jeff Schwartz's show, the Big Boys Club. It's his offensive line breakdown show he did for the draft prospects. Super crazy. They both end up on the Chiefs after a former Chiefs offensive lineman has them in a breakdown show of his. So I instantly recognized them from that. And I told my buddies, so I did the podcast with them. I was like, those guys definitely play for the Chiefs. And they're like, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah. I was like, Trey Smith, that guy's like 6'5", probably 330. I'm like, that guy definitely plays for the Chiefs. I mean, I haven't seen that many people that large in my entire life. So, I just waited till the end of the fight was over. I didn't want to bother them or anything. I went up to them and I just said, hey, I was a big fan. I chatted up with them about a little barbecue here and there. And then I got a picture with them. And then we were out of there. But it's super cool. It looked like they probably crushed about 100 wings a piece or so. And the main comment I've gotten from like friends, family, coworkers when I show them that picture is they're like, "You're not a small guy, but those guys look like planets compared to you." So it was a fun experience, really weird chance meeting, but crazy things happen, I suppose.
For sure, man. I saw the picture and I immediately was like, man, is Caleb like 5 foot? I mean, that's realistically, I know you're not 5 foot, but those guys, they are large individuals. And that just shows you, what it's like to be an NFL lineman. I mean, that's incredible. So that does lead me to a question. This line has been revamped. We obviously saw the injury to Kyle Long. What are your expectations there at right guard? We know Trey Smith obviously was drafted for a reason. A lot of people, and myself included, and I'm sure you're in that boat, feel he was definitely drafted a lot lower than he probably should have gone. Do you think he is going to be potentially the front runner for that, or do you think, that someone else could sneak in there and maybe steal it from him?
I think as of right now, he's got to be the front runner, which you think it's crazy to say like a rookie's going to come in here, especially a 6th-round rookie. This guy's a borderline, probably first, second-round draft pick based on his film alone. He wasn't getting the reason he fell is because he had the medical issues, which I think probably everyone in Chiefs Kingdom's touched on that right now. So I won't get into too much like the issue with the lung, with his blood clots in his lungs. That's the reason he fell. Now, from the Chiefs' perspective, you're looking at it. You just drafted 2 potential starters for a long time up front. Plus, you've got Joe Thuney for 5 years and Orlando Brown Jr. It may seem crazy to want to start 2 rookies next to each other. I'd go ahead and do it. Talent's there. You know what you're going to get at Andrew Wiley. You know what you're going to get at Nick Allegretti. There's no guarantees with Kyle Long right now, and LBT hasn't played football in over a year. But when you look at it, Trey Smith, multiple All-American teams, he was probably the best guard in the SEC, probably the second best lineman in the SEC behind Landon Dickerson. And I had him rated as my second highest rated guard in this year's draft. And he's probably a player I've covered more than anyone. So I think it's going to be his position to lose at this point. He's got all the physical tools. He's got the nastiness. He's got the mental intelligence. He's got the processing. You sit here on like they're saying on Jeff Schwartz's show or whatever. He's like, this guy looks the part. He acts the part. He plays the part. What sets him aside from everyone else is his mental process. And he sees things so much quicker. And I've touched on that on my show. It seems like he was playing faster than not just the defense a lot of the time, but faster than he's seeing things even quicker than his teammates can at times. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing him go out there and suit it up this year.
For sure, man. I think, when I made a video on him. I tried to cover every draft pick. Actually, I did cover every draft pick. And when I did, one of the ones that stood out to me the most was him, just specifically because of his tape. I mean, he plays through that whistle, and that's what you want. I mean, that aggressiveness as a guard is there. I mean, he's definitely got it. I'm excited to see it. I agree with you, man. I think it's his to lose. Um, you know, Hopefully no injuries happen with any more of our offensive linemen, because obviously we went out to build that depth up, so we have that. And I think that's exciting for sure to see the revamp of that. But you also hit on another player we went out and acquired, and that's Orlando Brown. Obviously we see Ramczyk, the right tackle for the Saints, sign that massive deal. Orlando Brown used to play right tackle. Now he's kicking over to what he feels is his number one spot, the left tackle position. We were going after Trent Williams, and obviously he gets pulled back to the 49ers for a tremendous, outstanding deal there. What are you thinking for Orlando Brown when it comes to a contract now? Because we're kind of really seeing a ballpark figure. If he comes out and performs and protects Patrick Mahomes like he's saying, I think he's going to draw a tremendous contract. What do you think about that?
Well, first of all, it befuddles me that someone can be larger than Trey Smith, because I saw Trey Smith in person, and you go out there and you look at it, and they've got Orlando Brown Jr. listed about 4 inches taller and 20 pounds heavier. That's hard to fathom someone can be that big, but he is the biggest player in the NFL probably. Now, I didn't even see how much did Ramczyk sign for. I heard the big deal. I just haven't had time to go look at what they were giving him. I assume they're going to make him well paid. He deserved every bit of it.
I didn't see the years, I think, but I did see it was 90 to 94 million, I believe. So it was definitely up there for a right tackle.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Um, with Brown, it's interesting because he is only 24 years old, but he has 3 years of league experience, which at that age, that's usually when guys are either getting ready for their first season or their second season, something around there. You know, he came out of the college from Oklahoma when he was barely 21 years old.
Yeah.
You know, he hadn't been, he had only been there for a while. He was at right tackle in Baltimore, even though he's been at left tackle his entire life. Why is that? Probably because Ronnie Stanley, one of the top end tackles in the league for Baltimore, they like him. You know, they had their booking guys. And, and with his deficiencies he was able to kind of make up for some of that in Baltimore because they ran the ball so effectively and so well. And I've done breakdown on his stuff, his run game. I mean, he is superior down blocker. He's good in zone. He just carries a lot of power. And, despite like all the people, his critics from like his combine that still say he's a bad athlete, I think he actually takes really good aiming points in space. He understands how he moves and he understands how to get in like these pulling around or going on the edge on like in a bull type play. He understands like the angle he has to hit to be able to knock the guy off in the block. He's going to command some money, but it's all going to depend on if he can improve his vertical pass setting. Something I've been talking about, which I don't know, we won't know until they go out there for camp. But basically, the thing with him is, I think if he can drop a little bit of weight, he'll be better off for that vertical passing. And when I say vertical pass setting, I'm talking about like not like what he did in Baltimore. Baltimore, you see a lot more run RPO plays. You
Mm-hmm.
see a lot more of play action type plays. You see a lot of like run cells basically,
Yeah.
which, his body type, he wouldn't have had to address that in Baltimore because they want him as big as possible so he can move people off the spot. He's going to have to play a little bit more athletic. The thing I like about him, though, he's so young and he has so much potential and he's really so big. You can set a pocket around him. You can get your guys up front to be able to set the wall. And then one thing he's really good at, he did this a lot in his matchup versus Myles Garrett. Garrett would come in and try to rip the edge because, he's a better athlete, but he's got such long arms and his timing is so good. And he really places his hands well. He's able just to wash the guys up the field past him. It doesn't look like a dominating block, but you have a hard time getting around a guy with that much reach on you and that much length. So it's going to cost the Chiefs some money to keep him around long term if they want to, but I don't think they give up a first round pick if they're not looking for a long term solution. And I know you could say it was an all-in deal just for them to try to win right now because they do have a Super Bowl window. But when you have a left tackle that's only 24 years old, he's made the Pro Bowl twice. He's basically a blank canvas. He's going to be played in big games his entire career so far. I think that's the kind of stuff you're going to be willing to spend money on because he'll only, even if you give him a 5-year deal, he'll still just barely be 30 years old by the time it's over. So I'd be in favor of it. It's going to be big money. Brett Veach doesn't really care about any of that. The way he structures the Chiefs' salary cap, they're trying to pay their impact guys, and they're going to coach up the guys that are on the lower levels. That's been the formula for them so far. That's kind of been something that Andy Reid, that's why he has the good coaching staff so they can get guys ready to go. Andy Heck's going to have a big task ahead of him this season. That's the Chiefs' offensive line coach, but I'm really looking forward to see how he's going to work with Orlando specifically because he could end up being one of the more special tackles in the NFL, especially while he'll be protecting Patrick Mahomes.
For sure. I definitely watched your breakdown when you did that on Twitter, especially when he's going against ankle bender Myles Garrett. I definitely wanted to see because obviously we understand he's one of by far, if some consider him the best DN, and that's speaking very highly of Myles Garrett. So how he handled him and managed him, I think that speaks volumes to what we're getting for sure. And we know what Patrick Mahomes endured when it came to the Super Bowl last year. I mean, he was literally horizontal at times, throwing 20-yard passes to the end zone. I mean, that was incredible. So, it's just for him to at least have some pocket and really kind of let's see things more develop. I think that's going to be incredible too. So we're obviously talking a little bit of extensions. The Honey Badger, said some things very early on. It sounded like he was displeased. But then as of late, it sounds like he got his landlord long crew based on his tweet. What are your thoughts on him getting an extension? Do you have a guess? So every time I've had a guest on, I've kind of had them put a guess out. Mine is 4 to 5 years, and I'm gonna go with 95 to 100. What are your thoughts on that?
I think they're gonna go in like I'll probably go like 3 year worth up to around 70, with probably about like 45 to 50 of that guaranteed and the rest in incentives. I always say that because he is getting a little bit older as a player, and I think that they probably recognize that. I think that's where a lot of the issues stem from. Even though he is in the prime of his career right now, he's made all pro teams the last 2 seasons. He's a smart guy also. He knows he's had some health issues in the past as far as like ligaments and knees and things like that. Brett Veach has been more or less, he's been pretty good at giving out these big deals and being able to get guys taken care of. The big thing for me, though, is for him, his entire career, he's always been kind of looking for a home since he got like kicked off at LSU's football team.
Yeah.
He was in Arizona, but then he had those injury issues and he struggled. And then he spent time in Houston, and their fan base kind of turned their back on him a little bit because they were probably just asking him to do too much or expecting way too much out of him. But then you put him in an environment with Steve Spagnuolo, and you put him with this Chiefs defense that has really just been a remarkable turnaround. And he's probably been the catalyst behind all that just because of his IQ and how much they trust him, where he's not just like a face of Kansas City. When you think of safety play in the NFL, you're always going to think of Tyrann Mathieu after he's done here. So obviously, I think they're going to want to keep him around a little bit longer. I don't see the deal being like 4 to 5 years, just because I think that they're going to try to give him. I think they're going to try to give him money up front. I think they're going to try to get him paid on his bonuses and then let him get his incentives, which I'm sure they'll write the incentives in more friendly, like going to the AFC Championship game, going to the Super Bowl, making the Pro Bowl. That stuff for him the last couple of seasons has been pretty easy, especially as good as the Chiefs have been. So I think he's definitely going to be a Chief even after this season. I think they'll get it done. I think he'll probably be a Chief the next 4 to 5 seasons, probably until he
Awesome.
retires.
Yeah, for sure. I think I'm hoping that it gets done before training camp. That way he's going in and he's not thinking about it anymore, because that's something you want to get accomplished well before that. So I'm super excited. Obviously we're hearing the rumblings that Chris Jones is going to be getting kicked to the end. I really do like our front seven on this defense, and I do have been very open in saying that I think that this is going to be the best defense Spags has had since he's been in the Kansas City Chiefs organization. What are your thoughts on the defense and really kind of Chris Jones being kicked out to the DN position?
Well, most defenses at the NFL level, especially when you consider that like 2 years ago, the Chiefs brought in pretty much entirely new faces, except for, Chris Jones and Anthony Hitchens. Those are pretty much the only guys, and Charvarius Ward. Those are pretty much the only guys that played significantly that they've retained from the 2018 AFC Championship runner-up team. To me, though, it's the third season of Spags. This is when they should be able to put it all together. This is when Matthew's been in the system. This is when Chris Jones has his job down. This is when Hitchens, those will probably be his best season. And they've got all these young guys that are coming up through the ranks. L'Jarius Sneed looks like he could end up being probably one of the best in the game. The young linebackers provide a lot of excitement. And then, I don't know what their plan is at corner, but it doesn't seem to bother them. Just if they can get some tall, athletic corners out there, they're just going to roll with it. So, but as far as Chris Jones, the defensive end goes, I think we've actually seen him go to defensive end 2 times in the last year, both against Kevin Stefanski coach teams when he was the OC at Minnesota, and this past season versus the Browns. The reason for that is those guys run a lot of 12 and 13 personnel, which that's either one back with 2 tight ends or one back with 3 tight ends. So they can really utilize like their outside zone game and their inside and mid zone games. The reason they do that is because he's a bigger body out there. It makes it easier for them, A, to get another big body on the inside to plug up gaps, but B, it's also going to make it harder on that tackling tight end to be able to get a double team block on him where he can kind of physically dominate them. I don't think we see him make a full-time move to defensive end, because when you get down to it, the brass tacks, he's the second best interior pass rusher in the NFL behind maybe the greatest defensive football player of all time, Aaron Donald. So it's hard to do that. And when you look at his tape from last year, he was so special rushing the interior. He only had what, he only had like 7 or 8 sacks all of last season, but he was pressuring quarterbacks at the highest rate of any defensive tackle in the NFL. So you get that. So to me, the thing is, I think they want to do it so they can get Deron Reed on the field more on early downs so that they can take Derek Nottie off the field on 2nd and long and 3rd and long, obvious passing downs. Because as good as Derek Nottie is, as crucial as he is as a run stuffer for the team, he doesn't provide a ton in the pass rush category. That's why I think they brought in Reed. So they're trying to make it a little bit harder. And I think that they just want to have a way to be able to generate more pressure off the edge. Frank Clark hasn't really gotten it done. Now, it'll be interesting to see, you'll have Taco Charlton competing for time with other guys, but I think it's more of just them worried about kind of their depth and experience at defensive end right now than anything. And the fact that I think their defensive tackle unit between the guys I mentioned, Kershawn Wharton, that's a pretty solid unit in there. They're going to have Collins back, so we'll see how it all pans out. I don't think he's going to be there every down. I think they'll strategically move him around on early downs, and then I think they'll get him back to the inside on the 3rd downs, on the money downs.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I'm excited just to see. I agree. I don't think that he's going to play full time at DN because you're utilizing. I mean, like you said, you have a special entity there playing D tackle. We know what you're going to get, but I also think that Reed is about as good of a replication as Chris Jones as you're going to get at the D tackle position. He does get sacks, and that's awesome. So I think it's a lot more acceptable to see Chris Jones playing more DN now. And then obviously the question mark around, Frank Clark, is he going to get suspended at the beginning of the year? Is there something that's going to be, done with him in that aspect? So is Taco Charlton going to be out there on the end more and things like that? So I think it's going to be interesting to see how that develops, but I really do like this front seven. I think it's going to be a good, exciting defense. One of the better ones we've seen here in a while for the Chiefs. So I do have some fun questions for you. I like to definitely make this, extremely fun and really kind of see what your interests are with this. So the first question that's going to be fun is if you could take any NFL player in the NFL, bring him to the Kansas City Chiefs, no salary cap is affected. Who are you going after? What and why are you going after them?
Whew, that's a good one. Let me think about it for a second. I'd probably just go with Aaron Donald. So the Chiefs would just have the most ungodly pass rush anyone had ever seen in the history of the NFL. I think either him or the linebacker for the
Darius Leonard.
Yes, I think either of those two, because all about building the Chiefs defense up right now. I think the offense is set for a while. I just would want to keep building the defense up. So I'd love to see either of those two guys.
Yeah, for sure. So I was going to ask you this kind of to piggyback off of that fun one. So mine would be a receiver, and I would like to actually see Davante Adams come to the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, with that being said, we obviously saw the aggressiveness for Juju Smith-Schuster in the free agency period. We obviously, I believe, and most believe that they were involved in the Julio Jones trade. Davante Adams is going to be a free agent. Do you think there's any possibility we could see him in a Chiefs uniform, just figuratively speaking? Because, I mean, we saw that aggressiveness, and he is going to be a free agent. I'm sure he wants to win a Super Bowl. We don't know what's going on with Aaron Rodgers. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that it would be really hard for the Chiefs to be able to go after him because you look at it and you still say, well, Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce are still the best pass catching duo in the NFL. And Mahomes really looks to those guys a lot. Having Adams on high money, which he would command, to me, I don't really see that being a big need for them because he's going to command a lot of money to come in and be the guy that's going to catch the ball the third most out of everyone. If they were going to do anything to add to the offense, I would say maybe try to bring in another good tight end and play some double tight end sets because Andy Reid does like to utilize 2 tight ends. I know they drafted Noah Gray, but for me, I think I'm fine with where the Chiefs are at receiver. I know everyone was freaking out all offseason because they're like, well, Mahomes looked awesome this year and he was throwing the ball to Kelce and Hill and sometimes Clyde and sometimes McCole Hardman and a combination of Byron Pringle and Marcus Robinson in there somewhere. So I don't think it's as big as issue as people were making it out to be this offseason, but I don't really see Adams like fitting in anywhere salary cap wise or with the team right now.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm just excited. I like the idea of it, and I would love to see that happen. Very similar to if Julio Jones would have came to the Chiefs. I think you're talking about Madden's type stuff, like
Yeah.
people putting in cheat code stuff. I think that's that would have been incredible to see. So my next fun question is more about the Kansas City Chiefs schedule. Um, you know, from an overall fan base of the NFL, more than just the Chiefs and the away team or the Chiefs and the opponent are going to be watching this game. Which game do you think is going to be of magnitude and people are just going to be like, this is a game I want to watch because I'm an NFL fan?
Chiefs Packers. I mean, if Rodgers is there, it's going to be Rodgers versus Mahomes. We got robbed of that meeting a couple of years ago because of the knee injury. Matt Moore went blow for blow with the mighty Aaron Rodgers that game. Coach Andy Reid coached Jim that game. It's just the defense was still gelling. I think Chris Jones was also hurt that game, so they didn't really have as much juice going. Other games, the other two games after that one that are big to me are obviously anytime Mahomes and Lamar matchup, that's going to be a big one. And then probably week one versus the Browns, like straight out of the gate. I think that's going to be huge for the landscape because I do think the Browns are probably that second team right behind the Chiefs right now. I mean, they're the only team that I really saw give the Chiefs trouble, even if they were without Mahomes for a while. So those would be the games I'm looking for is like must watch NFL games, must like if you're not a Chiefs fan, you're not a fan of the other team, you're still going to tune in to watch.
For sure, man. I think number one is for me is the Browns. I think the Browns got tremendously better in some aspects. They go out and solidify that secondary. They draft a kid out of Notre Dame for linebacker. They add Jadeveon Clowney, even though he's been, not necessarily that flashy first round, first overall pick. But I still think that he is going to add that element to Myles Garrett, where it's going to help solidify that. That offensive line has gotten better. I think overall it's going to come down to Baker Mayfield's play because they are getting Odell back. And obviously it looked like they were disconnected for a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. But I do think that that's going to be a very competitive football game right out the gate. Don't get me wrong. I'm glad it's at home to start out because I think that Arrowhead is going to be absolutely rocking, especially with not being full capacity for a full year. So I'm excited to see that game. Now, the next question is just as a fan, you as a fan of football, because I know you're a big time fan of football. Obviously, we see your film breakdown. We see how much you're passionate about this. From just a fan perspective, what game are you looking forward to individually?
A Chiefs game or just kind of any game this year for
Um,
football?
we'll start off with the Chiefs and then any game.
Okay. Oh, I got to think about it.
I'll give you an example. So my example is the Eagles. I'm a
Yeah.
big time. I'm Andy's obviously going back to Philly. I'm a big time Jalen Hurts fan. They go out and draft Devonta Smith. They got Jalen Rieger. They got Dallas Goddard. They still got Zach Ertz. A little bit of an aging offensive line. Defense is looking pretty solid, even though they're getting old as well. I like what the Eagles have. Plus, they're in probably the worst division in the NFL. So I'm excited for that game. So which kind of like that, what would you be looking forward to?
I believe the Chiefs have a Thursday night football game against the Chargers at some point. Mahomes versus Justin Herbert. That's the future quarterback playing the NFL right there. The Chargers have a ton of holes on their roster. I don't think they'll be as good defensively as they've been in years past because that unit's kind of getting a little older, a little more beat up. Even though I do think on offense, they've rebuilt their offensive line. They've got Rashawn Slater now, Corey Linsley up front for those guys. But man, when you watch Herbert play, you can see little aspects of Mahomes in there. You can see his own little flickers of the own stuff he does. He's a big guy. He's got a huge arm. This is going to be must-watch television for a while now because, I know everyone wants it to end up being like Mahomes versus Lamar is like the next Brady Manning and all this stuff. I think it's going to be an interdivisional matchup because when you watch Herbert throw the ball, it's crisp, it's concise. He can make plays on his leg. He can make all the throws on the run. And then you flip that by going, he did take the Chiefs down to the wire one time. He beat the Chiefs backups, But that week 2 matchup, maybe the Chiefs weren't quite all there. The Chargers took them down to the wire. It took some sensational plays from Mahomes to be able to beat some great plays from Herbert that game. The play I'm thinking of is the rollout to Hill, and Hill catches it and rolls in the end zone. That there's not too many guys that can make that throw, but to me, that's the future of the NFL. Like that's going to be the new face of the league is those two guys right there.
For sure, we face what could potentially be, like you said, the face of the NFL. We got the Ravens and Lamar Jackson. We got the Bills and Josh Allen. We got Herbert twice. I mean, those are definitely guys that are up and coming. Plus, we're starting to see some of the younger players too that are up and coming as well. So our schedule definitely presents a lot of ups and downs. We're seeing Julio Jones go over to the Titans. We definitely go there and play. I think that's going to be a very good competitive football game. I just really like how much of I guess good competition versus bad competition we have. So I think the schedule was laid out perfectly in my opinion. So I'm excited for that, man. I kind of want to talk about just stepping away from, the Chiefs and stuff. Where did you kind of really get I know you played football, but how did you get so good and really kind of just understanding film breakdown? Like what made you just want to get into that so much? Is it just your love for the game or really kind of talk about that?
Well, it all started like 2017 or so. I used to read like all the websites, and I saw some people started posting film. I'm like, I don't know how they got this. I said it's kind of cool. Meanwhile, at the same time all this is going on, I'm doing like my own football stuff. I played offensive line at Truman State, which in college and even the high school I went to, like film breakdown is a big part of what you do. You spend probably 3 to 4 hours a day just watching film, meetings every day up until the game, every day in the offseason, pretty much just sitting there watching film. It's become something, like towards the end of my time at Truman, like I didn't always look forward to it because I'm like, it's the same thing every time. Like you go into these meetings, they want to install these plays. I'm like, well, that's been the same place since I was in high school. It's the same assignments everywhere. Somewhere in there, I forget that there's like people who never like played football or did anything like that, who like when they see like the actual plays broken down from like a coach's angle, it like mystifies them. And so I was never even really big on social media really up until about like around just about last December, last November, something like that, when I started at Arrowhead Live. But I'd see all these people posting stuff, and it was like they're saying this stuff, and I'm like, I don't know if that's necessarily right, or maybe I have a different take on it based on what I would see, based on how we would run it, or what play I would even call that. And I'm like, you see like all these guys going, like these guys are like, what's this play call? I'm like, well, that's going to be power. And I was like, that's not power. I was like, that'd be called duo. This one right here. I'm like, this guy's calling it duo, but this is actually the ISO because the fullback's leading up through the middle. So I got into that. I kind of wanted to start doing that. And then I just saw that Arrowhead Live, which is an account that I had followed for a while, they had put out a thing that they were starting their own website and they needed staff members. So I filled out an application. They're like, what previous writing experience do you have? And I said, none at all. I said, I haven't even, I've taken like one English class since I was in college. So I'm like, okay. And I just wrote, they're like, what qualification? It was like, what qualifications? I was like, I've played football for like 12 years now. So like, I think I kind of know what I'm talking about a little bit here. So I did that. I got on with them, and pretty much the main accounts, they just started like retweeting all my stuff. And it was like right in the middle of the Chiefs' great run into the playoffs, and then the playoff run, and then all the stuff came after that. And, I broke down the wasp play from that Super Bowl, and like I was in just shock of how difficult it was from the drop that Mahomes had to how the offensive line picked up that twist up front to how Tyreek Hill and Andy Reid both out schemed the secondary. When you see guys in the secondary just saying, get back, don't let them go deep, they're able to find that crease in there. But yeah, I love it. I mean, it helps me keep connected to the game. I grew up loving it, so I'm always going to try to keep doing it for as long as I can. I've moved from more Twitter stuff to more YouTube stuff now, so I'm trying to grow that a little bit, keep that going.
For sure, man. It's amazing to see. I'm just gonna be honest. It's amazing to see how you break down film and talk about it. I've watched your podcast. I've watched your YouTube and stuff, and I mean, it's amazing because it really helps and goes along with understanding the game to people who just may not or are very interested in that aspect, like you said. And I think that's tremendous what you do, man. And whatever you plan on doing in the future, just that's incredible. And I just definitely want to give you props for that. Now, I do have a final question, really kind of and that's why I wanted to ask you that. The NFL does run a lot of nickel now on the defensive side of the football, and that's because obviously the passing is more of a prevalent situation now. We're seeing how heavy the passing is in the NFL, and a lot of elite quarterbacks. So, can you kind of just break down just the idea and the concept of nickel and why, I guess, who comes into that nickel spot and why that is such an important thing? Because I want people who watch this to understand, that I've seen a lot of questions. Why do we only have two linebackers on the field, and things like that? And why is Ben Neiman out there instead of, said other linebackers? So can you just kind of just give an overview of what nickel really is?
So we're just going to get into my weakest aspect of my game is breaking down secondary play. I'll try to do my best. Basically, the reason I think, you hit it on the head, we've seen a lot of it because teams are addicted to throwing the football. Now, I mean, it's all the stats guys, analytics guys will tell you it's the most efficient way to move the ball, which on paper it is a lot of the time. So the teams have to figure out a way to stop it. And pass rushers are really expensive and they don't always work out. So the best way I think teams have come up with ways to cover people is in that nickel package, putting more secondary players on the field. We've seen this a lot out of the Chiefs. I don't think they did it because they really wanted to. I think they did it to get their best players on the field, which when they started running that, which nickel is basically, like you said, just taking a linebacker off the field and you're adding another secondary player. It basically turns the defense into a 4-2, which is probably the most popular formation in college football, probably the most popular formation in the NFL right now, outside of like a base 34 look. So basically, you're going to have your four defensive linemen up front. Nothing changes out of like a base 4-3. Yeah, you're also going to have two linebackers in there, which you want to have like ideally you'd want to have two guys that can run a little bit, can do a few things here and there, and then you're going to have the rest of the guys, the five other guys, are going to be the defensive backs, which is why it's called nickel, because there's five defensive backs on the field, which you can have an assortment of guys. You're going to have all your corners. The reason the Chiefs are able to run it a lot and run it so effectively is Dan Sorensen was actually really good at stepping up in the box and almost playing as like a hybrid linebacker, hybrid secondary player for them a lot. Tyrann Mathieu, incredibly versatile. He can step up and play in the box when needed. Juan Thornhill, when he was healthy, he was doing a great job of that. But basically, the Chiefs run this heavy man looks. They want to play man. That's why they can get it. And this is why I think they get away with playing, corners that maybe don't have the most talent, but are just big, physical, athletic guys. It's because they know their safety play. They have probably the deepest safety unit in the NFL when Thornhill's healthy. They know they can get away with it. So they're basically just wanting to get on, play that tight man, and they're wanting Tyrann Mathieu to go roam and be the honey badger. They're wanting Dan Sorensen kind of up by the box, and they want Juan Thornhill to be like the last line of defense. They want him to be the fly ball guy out there in the middle of the field. As far as like you said, Ben Neiman being on the field, it's hard to tell you. I've said this a lot on my podcast. I don't know why he's on the field. I'm not going to tell you the reason because no one knows. So I'm not going to pretend like I do by any stretch of the imagination. But, it's interesting to see him out there. But I think that with the way the Chiefs linebacker core is looking this year, we can see some more 4-3 out of them. I think that'll probably be a little more beneficial. But I'm really looking for Willie Gay to take over those reps from Ben Neiman, if not Nick Bolton.
For sure, man. I'm excited. I'm excited because I think Willie has really progressed. Dog shaking over here. He's telling me he wants to go out again. But yeah, I'm excited. I think we've heard some very positive things coming from the Willie camp for sure. We already knew he had decent route or I guess coverage, but it's gotten way better is what I'm hearing. So I'm excited for that, man. And that wraps this up, man. I can't thank you enough for coming on. I know we could talk forever about this. I know you honestly, man, again, you break down film is such a tremendous thing. And I'd love to have you back on so we can talk about this again. But man, it was a privilege. It was an honor. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate it, Caleb.
Dude, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, man. I really had a great time with it, man.
That's what's up. And if you want to give everybody your handles one more time and the podcast so they can swing on over there and check it out.
All right, y'all. If you'd forgotten, it's on Twitter at CJ Scoops. Go check that out. All my writing and that works on arrowheadlive.com. I've got over 150 articles I've written throughout the past year and a half. You can go look back to stuff all the way as the Super Bowl. If you're bored and want to go take a look at that, you can go take a look at like Willie Gay's college film. You can go take a look at Nick Bolton's college film. Both of their best games in college were both against Alabama. I don't think that's a coincidence because big time players make big time plays in big time games. The podcasts I run are the Coach's Corner, which is through Arrowhead Live. You can find that on just our Spotify, Apple Music, and we also have it on YouTube. So go subscribe to that. And ChiefsTake, which you can also find on Spotify and Apple. Yeah, and that's just at ChiefsTake. So go take a look at those. I think we put out some really good content there. I have a good time doing that with my friends. So you guys should definitely go take a look at all that.
That's awesome, man. Well, you guys know how I wrap this up. You guys know how we end this. I appreciate you coming by, checking out the Beat of KC. And as always, have a good day.